Well, good morning and welcome to St. Thomas Academy. I'm Rear Admiral John Crowley, U.S. Coast Guard retired. I'm the interim headmaster, and I'm so pleased to welcome everyone here today on Veterans Day. Also, very importantly, to our Academy is the award of the Fleming Medal, which we are so proud to host the families and friends of two distinguished alumni from St. Thomas and to remember their service. The remainder of today is all administered and guided by our cadets. And that's another reason I'm proud to have General Votel, our honored guests of family members, board members, family of cadets, and of course, all of our cadets out there and of both schools. With that, post the colors.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cadet Staff Sergeant Oliver Balfour, class of 2021. On behalf of the Corps Cadets, I would like to welcome you all to our annual Veterans Day Ceremony. November 11th is a day to recognize the veterans of our nation who have fought to protect our freedoms. On the 11th day of the 11th month in the 11th hour of 1918, an armistice was declared, eventually ending World War I. 1 year later, and 100 years ago today, November 11th was deemed a holiday known as Armistice Day. In 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower renamed the holiday Veterans Day, to commemorate the sacrifice of American veterans in all military conflicts. There are over 16 million veterans living in America and many more who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. With our brave brothers and sisters in mind, let us come together in prayer. Please stand. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Gracious God, we give thanks for military men and women, both from past and present, and for their courageous service and sacrifice to our country and its people to secure the blessings of life, liberty, and justice for all. May our remembrance be a timely reminder that our freedom was purchased at high cost and should not be taken for granted. Give us resolve to labor in faithful service to you until all share the benefits of freedom, justice, and peace through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This year, in honor of the 75th anniversary of the Allied invasion of the beaches of Normandy, France, we would like to give a special recognition to our World War II veterans. I would now like to call to the stage friend of St. Thomas Academy, Mr. David Benfer, and his wife, Mary, of Sarasota, Florida. Mrs. Benfer is the sister of Colonel retired John Sterner, St. Thomas Military Academy, class of 1959, and the aunt of Gregory Schlicht, STA, class of 2019. The Benfers visited the beaches of Normandy, France last year. They brought back a small amount of sand from Omaha Beach and are donating that sand to be placed on permanent display at the Academy in honor of the brave men who sacrificed their lives in the name of freedom during that invasion 75 years ago. There's no doubt that many St. Thomas Military Academy graduates bravely crossed those sands, some making the ultimate sacrifice. Mr. and Mrs. Benfer, thank you for this incredibly meaningful donation.
Thank you, Oliver. Headmaster Crowley, General Votel, cadets, faculty, staff, and my host, John Sterner, and guests. It's a true honor for me and my wife, Mary, to be at St. Thomas Academy today to honor all STA veterans. This is a day when the nation pauses to celebrate the valor, the sacrifices, and the services of all branches of the military. This academy has inspired many to serve the country and has a long history of academic excellence. This academy has a value-based learning system which continues to respect the Constitution of our country. On October 18th, 2018, when Mary and I had the opportunity to visit the D-Day beaches of Normandy, France, where the June 6, 1944 Operation Overlord commenced. This assault was to liberate France and to crush the Nazi war machine. This date has gone down in history as the final stage of the preservation of the free world. Visiting Omaha Beach and seeing the more than 9,000 marble crosses in perfect rows in Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial was truly an emotional day. Our military gave their all in this complex assault, and many made the ultimate sacrifice to preserve liberty and freedom for all here today and in the free world. It is my honor to present to St. Thomas Academy sand from Omaha Beach to remind us and present and future cadets of the sacrifice our veterans have made for liberty, peace, for this country. May God continue to bless all branches of the military and all veterans and cadets of the St. Thomas Academy. Thank you.
General Joseph L. Votel is a retired U.S. Army 4-star officer and most recently the commander of U.S. Central Command, responsible for U.S. and coalition military operations in the Middle East, Levant, and Central and South Asia. During his 39 years in the military, he commanded special operations and conventional military forces at every level. His career included combat in Panama, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Notably, he led a 79-member coalition that successfully liberated Iraq and Syria from the Islamic State Caliphate. He preceded his assignment at CENTCOM with service as the commander of U.S. Special Operations Command and the Joint Special Operations Command. General Votel was recognized with the Distinguished Military Leadership Award from the Atlantic Council, the U.S. Arab Defense Leadership Award from the National Council on U.S.-Arab Relations, the Distinguished Service Award from the National Medal of Honor Society, the Sergeant James T. Reagan Lifetime Achievement Award from the Lead the Way Foundation, and the Freedom Award from the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. In July of 2019, General Votel was announced as the prospective President and CEO of Business Executives for National Security. He is a strategic advisor for the Sierra Nevada Corporation, as well as a non-resident distinguished fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C., and the Belfer Center at the John F. Kennedy School of Government in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and an advisor to the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point, New York. He is a member of the Board of Directors for Service to School, a nonprofit organization that helps military veterans transition and win admission to the nation's best graduate and undergraduate schools, and is a member on the Council of Foreign Relations. General Votel is a 1980 graduate of the United States Military Academy and earned master's degrees from the U.S. Command and Staff College and the Army War College. He is married to Michelle, and they have 2 grown sons, a daughter-in-law and a granddaughter. The Votels reside in Lake Elmo, Minnesota. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General Joseph Votel.
Thanks, Baker, for that great introduction. And how about a big round of applause for our musicians here this morning? That great rendition of the national anthem, fantastic. Headmaster Admiral John Crowley and Commandant of Cadets Neil Hetherington, members of the Junior ROTC Department, St. Thomas Academy faculty and staff members, parents and friends, family members of our Fleming Medal recipients, and especially the cadets of this extraordinary school. Thanks for the opportunity to join you this morning for the awarding of the Distinguished Fleming Medal. Let me also just give a quick shout out to Bill and Colleen Kramer, a fellow Cretan classmate, but the parents of at least 3 students here at St. Thomas who really set me up for this opportunity to come and speak here at St. Thomas Academy. I'm very, 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 very grateful for it. I was mentioning to the headmaster that when I was in high school, he asked me if I played sports, and I said yes, I played football and basketball, and then I said the basketball coach when I was a sophomore at Cretan said the best way that you can contribute to the Cretan basketball team is to be on the wrestling team. And so the last time that I was actually here at St. Thomas Academy, I was a senior at Cretan High School, and I was a member of the wrestling team. And we had an event out here at St. Thomas. And frankly, I don't remember the results of the overall match or of my particular bout at the 180-pound class. I was a very average wrestler, so there's an even chance that I either won or lost my bout. But for the purposes of today, I think we can just agree that the best man won that afternoon. You know, it's interesting to me that while Cretin and St. Thomas were often arch rivals in sports at the time, I always had a very deep and healthy respect for St. Thomas Academy. They were always very worthy competitors, and like Cretin, enjoyed a strong and positive reputation across the Twin Cities. And while we enjoyed and indeed benefited from a very strong rivalry, we all actually grew up with each other, lived in the same neighborhoods, went to the same grade schools, attended the same churches, danced at some of the same mixers, oftentimes dated the same girls, and matriculated to many of the same colleges. And I'm proud that my graduating class from Cretin remains close to our St. Thomas Academy counterparts. I attended an event last spring honoring one of my Cretin classmates who was unfortunately killed a number of years ago in an accident while attending St. John's University. And I was pleased that we had a number of St. Thomas Academy graduates also in attendance. I think there is something to the notion that institutions that ground themselves in strong values, lifelong relationships, citizenship to our nation, service to our community, have a tendency to be drawn together. I always thought this was the case with our respective schools, and I'm so honored to be joined today with my wife, Michelle, to spend some time with you today. In a few moments, I'll share some comments on this award and provide some thoughts for our cadets as they consider their places as graduates of this proud institution. But first, let me address two other groups who are present today. Let me start with the staff and faculty here at St. Thomas Academy. Thanks to all of you for your efforts to not only educate and motivate, but to truly inspire these young men who sit among us this morning. There is no more noble profession than that of a teacher or coach. I can recall vividly those who served this role for me when I was a student, and they had an overwhelmingly positive influence on me. All of you can only feel pride in the accomplishments of these young men and the significant role that you are playing in preparing them for a life of consequence. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for our St. Thomas Academy faculty, staff, and coaches. The second group I want to recognize are the parents, grandparents, friends, and families of these cadets. I'm a product of a very large and engaged family, and I understand well how important that was for me and any success I attained in life, personally or professionally. Thanks for the role that you have played. None of this happens without this. And no one gets anywhere without the help of their families and their communities. Thanks for setting a good example. Thanks for demanding high standards. And thanks for nurturing and encouraging the passion of your children. You too should feel pride this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for the parents, grandparents, families, and friends of the young men of St. Thomas Academy. As you know, today is Veterans Day in America. It is a day we acknowledge the service of our fellow citizens in uniform. I believe veterans provide a unique thread of strength in the fabric of our country. Many of us grew up in the shadow and under the influence of World War II, Korea, or Vietnam veterans. And today, many of our communities now include veterans from the global war on terrorism. Some veterans served as a result of a draft. Many more volunteered to serve their country. Some have a history of uniformed service in their families, and others are the first in their line to serve. Some joined the military to escape bad situations or because they were out of options. Many are indeed immigrants to our country and often see military service as a duty to thank the country that gave them and their families an opportunity to be free and safe. Whatever the reason, it is important to publicly acknowledge this service. We are a generous country, and I am appreciative for the multitude of programs and organizations designed to support our veterans and their families. Our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, once observed while reflecting on the sacrifices of the Civil War that a nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure. President Calvin Coolidge underscored Lincoln's remarks when he commented after World War I that a nation that forgets its heroes will itself soon be forgotten. General George C. Marshall, the architect of victory in World War II, remarked, "It is impossible for the nation to compensate for the services of a fighting man. There is no pay scale that is high enough to buy the services of a single soldier during even a few minutes of the agony of combat, the physical miseries of the campaign, or of the extreme personal inconvenience of leaving his home to go to the most unpleasant and dangerous spots on earth to serve his nation." During the dedication of the Korean War Memorial in 1995, President Bill Clinton commented to both veterans and those who died in that conflict by saying, "We honor you today because you did answer the call to defend a country you never knew and a people you never met. They are a good country, and they are a good people, and the world is better because of you." During the dedication of the Vietnam Memorial on Veterans Day in 1988, President Ronald Reagan included this important reminder in his remarks. "We remember today that all our gentle heroes of Vietnam have given us a lesson in something more, a lesson in living love. Yes, for all of them, those who came back and those who did not, their love for their families lives. Their love for their buddies on the battlefields and friends back home lives, and their love for their country lives." I'm so glad that St. Thomas Academy is choosing this day to present this very distinguished award to two veteran graduates who not only carried with them the values and virtues that they gained as students here, but in fact put them into action in the service of our country. The Fleming Medal is a way to acknowledge and remember this service, a reminder to all of us that in difficult times, good men and women rise up and go to the aid of their country. And when that service was over, they came back to their communities and made us better through their understanding of service, sacrifice, discipline, and teamwork. In a few moments, we will be presenting the Fleming Medal to the families of two distinguished graduates of this institution, General Alfred M. Grunther and Major General Patrick J. Ryan, who you will hear more about from our cadets. The Fleming Medal is named in honor of class of 1935 graduate and Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, Captain Richard Fleming. Captain Fleming distinguished himself by conspicuous gallantry under fire, above and beyond the call of duty. During the consequential Battle of Midway, early in the war in the Pacific, Captain Fleming demonstrated a level of leadership, heroism, and selflessness in several sequential battlefield events, which ultimately resulted in his death, and in the process of doing this, significantly influenced the outcome of this battle by inspiring the airmen that he led to press the fight to its successful conclusion. For this, the President of the United States at the time, Franklin Roosevelt, posthumously conveyed this Congressional Medal of Honor. It is right and proper that St. Thomas use this example as a way to recognize alumni veterans who also distinguish themselves. Today's recipients, General Alfred Grunther and Major General Patrick Ryan, are eminently deserving of this recognition. Each of them played key leadership roles not only during World War II, but also over a lifetime of uniformed service to our country. Alfred Grunther concluded his uniformed service as the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, a position once held by Dwight David Eisenhower and Omar Bradley. He went on to continue his service as the President of the American Red Cross. Major General Patrick Ryan, an ordained Roman Catholic priest, concluded his uniformed service as the U.S. Army Chief of Chaplains, responsible for the spiritual well-being of the entire U.S. Army. He served our Catholic Church for the remainder of his life. I'm very pleased that General Grunther's grandchildren and great-grandchildren, as well as his daughter-in-law Brigida and her sister Carol, are able to be with us today. Congratulations to both our recipients and their families. I hope that the example of these two men can be another beacon for our cadets on the virtues of leading a life of service to their country and community. Let me close my comments today by addressing the young men of St. Thomas Academy and offering you some advice from a Greek philosopher, which I think may be of some use to you as you continue to move forward in whatever is next for each of you. The Greek philosopher I'm thinking about is Aristotle, one of the greatest intellectual figures of Western history. And he spent a considerable part of his life thinking and reflecting on the idea of great souledness, those human qualities that made people not only lead positive and productive lives, but in fact made them stand out among their fellow citizens. Aristotle observed that great men, those he deemed as the great souls, shared three virtues that set them apart from others. The first of these virtues was prudence, the ability to govern and discipline yourselves, to use caution and thoughtfulness in taking action and making decisions, and to endeavor to accumulate wisdom over the course of your lives. All of you will be tempted to take the easier path, taking shortcuts or looking for instant gratification. This is seldom successful. Nothing truly good comes easily. All experiences, good and bad, is important, and it gives us the ability to accumulate wisdom that will help inform our future decisions and actions. Success comes through hard work and preparation. This school is helping you to develop the skills that will instill discipline and help you make good decisions over the course of your life. The second of Aristotle's virtues is passion, the ability to love something even when it is hard or seemingly unattainable. Passion requires determination and conviction. All of you have activities in your life that you feel strongly about. It might be athletics, it might be academics, it might be reading, writing, caring for animals, or something like robotics or technology. Whatever it is, strive to love and pursue it, despite the obstacles that might get in your way. Passion for things we enjoy as young men helps us develop passion for things that will be more important to us as adults and for the communities in which we will live and serve. The final virtue that Aristotle spoke of is patience, the ability to endure difficult or trying circumstances without immediately responding with anger, complaints, or resignation. Patience requires tolerance, understanding, and the need to look at all sides of a problem. As my wife of 39 years often reminds me, everyone is entitled to their own ridiculous opinion. Patience means we exercise self-restraint and not jump to conclusions. Patience means that we act stoically, with dignity, understanding, maturity, and accumulated wisdom. In the future, you will undoubtedly find yourself in difficult situations. Patience will help you and those around you navigate through these times. The greatest leaders our nation ever produced are those who could remain calm and collected when confronted with seemingly insurmountable challenges. Being part of this school and learning about teamwork and discipline will help you develop patience. I think Aristotle had it right. 2,500 years of human history can't be wrong. So that is my advice to all of you cadets this morning. Whether you are underclassmen just starting out or seniors getting ready to head off to college soon, be prudent by disciplining yourself. Be passionate about the things you love and pursue them through the difficulties that arise. And strive to exercise patience when you confront difficult people and situations. Today, you will hear more about three graduates of this institution, Robert Fleming, Alfred Grunther, and Patrick Ryan, who exhibited these virtues in spades. The 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, observed when speaking at an event honoring veterans and those lost in service to our country. As we express our gratitude, we must not forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them. The examples of others inspire us to do better, to be kinder, to be more appreciative of what we have. They remind us that despite the politics, we must appreciate and support those that answer the call. And they teach us that sacrifices are never made in vain. They mean something, and our public acknowledgement of that is so important for those that are left behind and for those who have served beside them. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be here this morning. It is inspiring for me to see the values, citizenship, patriotism in action, as well as the manifested acknowledgement and appreciation for those who came before all of you. I wish each of you the good luck and Godspeed, and I wish the St. Thomas community the very best as it continues this mission of preparing young men for positive and progressive lives in our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Votel, for those inspiring words. On behalf of the St. Thomas Academy Corps of Cadets, we would like to present to you a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
I would like to briefly share some of the history behind the Captain Richard E. Fleming Alumni Veterans Medal and the St. Thomas Academy military traditions that accompany this award. But before I do that, I would like to recognize all of our veterans who have joined us here today. I would ask that you please stand to be recognized. Thank you to all our veterans for attending our ceremony today. We are forever indebted to your service. As the Academy proceeds through its 134th year of existence, our military traditions remain true and steadfast. As St. Thomas Academy founder, Archbishop John Ireland, who served as a chaplain for several Minnesota regiments in the Union Army during the Civil War, was instrumental in adopting military training as part of an overall curriculum for young men. As an avid student of history and the military art, Archbishop Ireland frequently observed World War I era military maneuvers and tactics at Fort Snelling, and he would cheer for St. Thomas cadets as they engaged in mock trench battles against the University of Minnesota cadets. In his later years, he was involved in many veteran organizations, including the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization of Union Army veterans. In addition, Archbishop Ireland was known to personally inspect the Corps while in formation or serve as the reviewing officer during many military reviews. As a military institute, our list of graduates who have served this nation in our armed forces is long and distinguished. Our alumni have served in every conflict since 1890. Most notable was the World War II generation, the greatest generation, where the vast majority of St. Thomas Military Academy graduates and faculty members from 1935 to 1945 served, with many killed in action. In 2007, the STA administration approved a new award to honor our veteran graduates. The award is officially named the Fleming Alumni Veteran Award, or simply the Fleming Medal, after Captain Richard E. Fleming, class of 1935, and recipient of the Medal of Honor for his actions during the Battle of Midway in 1942, and our highest decorated graduate. It is altogether fitting and appropriate that we read Captain Fleming's Medal of Honor citation as we prepare to honor two St. Thomas Academy graduates who, like Captain Fleming, were instrumental as great leaders during World War II. The citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism and conspicuous intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty as Flight Officer, Marine Scout Bombing Squadron 241, during action against enemy Japanese forces in the Battle of Midway on 4 and 5 June 1942. When his squadron commander was shot down during the initial attack upon an enemy aircraft carrier, Captain Fleming led the remainder of the division with such fearless determination that he dived his own plane to the perilously low altitude of 400 feet before releasing his bomb. Although his aircraft was riddled by 179 hits in the blistering hail of fire that burst upon him from Japanese fighter guns and anti-aircraft batteries, he pulled out with only 2 minor wounds inflicted upon himself. On the night of 4 June, when the squadron commander lost his way and became separated from the others, Captain Fleming brought his own plane in for a safe landing at its base, despite hazardous weather conditions and total darkness. The following day, after less than 4 hours' sleep, he led the 2nd Division of his squadron in a coordinated glide bombing and dive bombing assault upon a Japanese battleship. Undeterred by a fateful approach glide, during which his ship was struck and set afire, he grimly pressed home his attack to an altitude of 500 feet, released his bomb to score a near miss on the stern of his target, then crashed to the sea in flames. His dauntless perseverance and unyielding devotion to duty were in the keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Given under my hand in the city of Washington this 24th day of November, 1942. Signed, Franklin D. Roosevelt, President of the United States. In 2008, a design competition was held for cadets to create a medal that would capture the themes of STA, military service, and country. After a difficult selection process, Cadet Andrew Schaefer, class of 2008, won the competition. His design superimposed the Maltese cross worn on the Cadet Class A lapel, with the school crest, crossed rifle and saber, and 4 blue stones to symbolize the pillars of STA. On the top of the medal, a Latin phrase, Pro Dio e Patria, for God and country, is inscribed. It is important to acknowledge and recognize the class of 2008 for their senior gift funded this effort.
Let us sing for unsung heroes, those who lay their dreams aside, choosing honor more than glory, pledging faith with quiet pride. Those whose uniform is courage, yet are unashamed of tears, finding in their love of freedom power stronger than their fears. Sing a song for unsung heroes, sing from sea to shining sea, as the faithful sang before you. Sing the song of liberty.
Let us sing for unsung heroes, those who answer freedom's call, those united by one purpose, all for one and one for all. We will sing and not be silenced. We will keep our voices strong, for as long as we keep singing, freedom's cry will still live on. Sing a song for unsung heroes, sing from sea to shining sea, as the faithful
angels sang before you. Sing the song of liberty. Sing the song of liberty. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's bride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. Let us sing a song of freedom. Sing the song of liberty, America.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce today's first Fleming Award recipient, Major General Patrick J. Ryan, St. Thomas Academy, Class of 1919, United States Army. General Patrick J. Ryan was born in Litchfield, Minnesota on December 3, 1902, to his mother, Johanna Ryan. Soon before General Ryan's birth, his father passed away. Because of this, General Ryan spent his childhood and teenage years helping his mother around their farm in Litchfield until he went on to high school. His high school career started at St. Thomas Military Academy in 1915, where he later graduated in the class of 1919. Due to the time period, General Grunther and General Ryan knew each other in high school, as General Grunther writes later in their lives. After his high school career at St. Thomas Military Academy, he attended the University of St. Thomas. He received his BA and felt called to the priesthood. After college, General Ryan spent about 4 years at the St. Paul Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. When General Ryan's school life was complete, he decided his next step in life was to join the military as a chaplain for the Army. During his early years serving in the Army, he was deployed to many different places, such as Fort Leavenworth in Kansas, Fort Riley in Kansas, and Fort Shafter in Hawaii. After these deployments, General Ryan was stationed in Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. from 1935 to 1939. He continued his ministry in Walter Reed Hospital, working with the sick and dying. Here, he learned much about the world around him and the people he would be serving. After the Nazi invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939, General Ryan was appointed to the 3rd Infantry Division. He felt a strong connection to these men as he served with them for the years following. One of the division's most notable events was Operation Torch, the invasion of French Morocco in November 1942. After his work with the 3rd Infantry Division, General Ryan joined the 5th Army in the Italian campaign. As this campaign was focused on the invasion of Italy, General Ryan joined in the attack on Salerno on September 3, 1943. With the official surrender of the Nazi Party in 1945, General Ryan was relieved that the atrocity he was experiencing was over. After his active duty service, General Ryan was promoted to the role of Army Deputy Chief of Chaplains in 1946. A year later, in 1947, Pope Pius XII recognized General Ryan for his patriotism and valor, along with his service and dedication to the priesthood, and gave him the title of Monsignor. Although General Ryan's term of Army Deputy Chief of Chaplains ended in 1948, he was re-elected again in 1952. To this day, General Ryan is the only person to have ever held the role of Army Deputy Chief of Chaplains twice. Because of General Ryan's uncomparable work as Army Deputy Chief of Chaplains, President Eisenhower promoted him to the role and position of Army Deputy Chief of Chaplains in 1954. This role entails leadership over all chaplains located in the United States Army. While General Ryan was in the position of Chief of Chaplains, he greatly emphasized morality among soldiers. In General Ryan's retirement in 1958, he wrote a book summarizing his thoughts, beliefs, and teachings to the soldiers, called A Soldier Priest Talks to Youth. While researching General Ryan, I have had the privilege of getting to read this book. In A Soldier Priest Talks to Youth, he emphasizes specific virtues that one must acquire inside themselves to become the perfect soldier and man. Some of these virtues include chastity, honesty, patience, heroism, ambition, and many more. General Ryan worked to instill these virtues into his men and to truly better the man, not only the soldier. In General Ryan's retirement, he continued his service to those around him, returning to his home state of Minnesota. During his retirement, Pope Paul VI recognized General Ryan, granting him the title of Pronountiary Apostolic in 1967. This is one of the highest recognitions a priest can receive in the Catholic Church. Along with recognitions from two popes, General Ryan earned many medals and awards because of his service. These included the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, the Distinguished Service Medal, the Army Commendation Ribbon, and many decorations from Brazil, Britain, France, and Italy. Throughout General Ryan's retirement, he went on to work for the St. Thomas Board of Trustees and in the Catholic Digest, a Minnesota-based Catholic magazine and publication. He spent his time offering Mass and serving in various chapels in Minnesota until his death on June 9, 1978. General Ryan spent his life devoted to God and his country, leading those around him in the process. It is with great honor and respect that we present the 2019 Fleming Award to General Patrick J. Ryan. At this time, I would ask General Votel and Admiral Crowley to join us on stage to present the Fleming Medal. Accepting the Fleming Medal on behalf of General Ryan is St. Thomas Academy's chaplain, Father Mark Pavlak.
Pro Deo et Patria, for God and country. These are the words found in the Fleming Medal, as well as the motto of the chaplaincy of the United States Army, of which Major General Patrick Ryan, Monsignor Patrick Ryan, was Chief of Chaplains. He lived out this motto very symbolically, serving God and serving country as a priest of Jesus Christ. It is very fitting, then, that we remember this distinguished alumnus of St. Thomas Military Academy, a man deeply devoted to service. Major General Ryan is a reminder to all of us here at the Academy to ask ourselves, how can I serve God and country, and how can I do it with honor? It is my honor to receive this award on his behalf as a fellow priest of the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce today's second Fleming Award recipient, General Alfred M. Grunther, STA Class of 1916, United States Army. General Grunther was born in Platte Center, Nebraska. He was born on March 3, 1899, the oldest child of his mother and father, Mary and Christian Grunther. General Grunther's father always instilled a value of academic success into his son. He supervised his schoolwork, talked to him about the value of knowledge, and taught him checkers, not as a game, but because it was good mental exercise. General Grunther attended St. Joseph's Catholic School in Platte Center until the summer of 1912. This is when General Grunther's father, Chris, had the decision of where to send his son to high school. Chris Grunther had always perceived that his son possessed the skills of a good soldier, and remembered that at one time he had seriously thought about studying to become a priest, and decided to enroll him for high school at St. Thomas Military Academy in St. Paul, Minnesota. And so, in the fall of 1912, General Grunther traveled to St. Paul, Minnesota to start his freshman year at St. Thomas Military Academy. Chris Grunther was a prominent leader in Nebraska's political climate. He backed many candidates running for office, started a support group for presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan, and even served as campaign manager for United States Senator Gilbert M. Hitchcock. This proved dividend for General Grunther, as Senator Hitchcock was able to appoint General Grunther to the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1916. General Grunther spent 8 months at the preparatory school in Washington, D.C., before beginning his West Point career in June of 1917. General Grunther wrote in a letter, "I entered West Point in early June 1917, which meant that my class would graduate in June of 1921. But a dramatic thing happened about August 15, 1918. The adjutant came to the mess hall to read a very special order. He started out by saying, 'When I finish reading this order, there will be a 5-minute period of silence.' The order stated that our class would be graduated on November 1st, 1918, after approximately 17 months at West Point. Apparently, we were urgently needed in World War I. General Grunther graduated 4th in his class at West Point on November 1st, 1918, and was ready to make an immediate impact on the United States Army. He would have to wait to get the chance, however, as World War ended just 10 days after General Grunther's class graduated from West Point. In 1920, General Grunther, at the time a second lieutenant, was assigned to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and was made an instructor at the post school. He taught a vast array of subjects ranging from military history, law, and mess management to courtesy, hygiene, and bookkeeping. This was quite an assignment for a man who had just turned 21, as many of his fellow professors were veterans of 20-plus years of service in the Army. During the 1920s, the card game of bridge was a very popular national pastime. Many of the young officers at Fort Knox spent night after night at the officers' club playing the game. But General Grunther, occupied with classroom chores, cast a disapproving eye on the whole business and held bridge playing as a waste of time. One night, however, General Grunther was invited for the first time to dinner at the home of his superior officer, Major W.E. Gruber. There were 12 officers in the party, and General Grunther assumed the evening would be one of discussion, where he could make a fine impression of his knowledge on his superiors. He was horrified when 3 card tables were set up after dinner, and Major Gruber casually asked him, "You play bridge, of course?" General Grunther had to admit that he didn't know the game. The Major gave him a look of incredulity, and then drew him aside and gave him a quick summary of the rules. That night was a complete and utter debacle for General Grunther, and he vowed that it would never happen again. He bought a rule book, studied it hard, and began frequently visiting the officers' club to play. General Grunther's decision to learn to play bridge paid him an unexpected and very special reward. At the officers' club, he met a pretty young hostess. Her name was Miss Grace Crum from Jeffersonville, Indiana. They became a couple and got married in 1922. They had 2 sons, Donald and Richard, who would both go on to attend West Point and rise to the rank of colonel in the Army themselves. General Grunther started a competitive bridge league and started to become very good at the game. After lots of practice and numerous wins at local and national tournaments, General Grunther was considered not only the best bridge player in the Army, but in the world as well. General Grunther is the author of 4 successful books about the game of bridge, the most famous being Duplicate Bridge Guide and Duplicate Contract Complete. In 1935, General Grunther, still a lieutenant, was promoted to the rank of captain. 4 years later, General Grunther got his first and only field command, the 15th Field Artillery Battalion at Fort Sam Houston in Texas. In 1941, General Grunther was sent to Washington to serve at General Headquarters under Lieutenant General Leslie McNair. A young brigadier general by the name of Mark Clark was also on General McNair's staff, and the 2 men soon became good friends. General Clark also happened to be a friend of a colonel named Dwight D. Eisenhower, who had recently returned from the Philippines to serve as Chief of Staff to Lieutenant General Walter Kruger, commander of the 3rd Army. Kruger had been post commander of Fort Sam Houston while General Grunther was on field duty there. On Clark's recommendation and Kruger's strong endorsement, Eisenhower made General Grunther his deputy. It was love at first sight, Eisenhower recalled. He always had a joke or a wisecrack. He had all the answers at his fingertips, and he never got tired. The 2 men remained close friends forever. In 1942, General Eisenhower was sent to London to take command of all American forces in Europe. 2 months later, General Eisenhower ordered General Grunther to come immediately to London. Upon his arrival in London, General Grunther was informed by General Eisenhower about Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa, and that General Grunther would be the chief planning officer for it. Within 6 weeks, the entire operation was planned in detail. It turned out to be a whopping success. Following the success of Operation Torch, General Eisenhower had General Grunther work on another invasion, this time in Italy, in 1943. After General Grunther's brilliant planning, the mission turned out to be another success. General Grunther was promoted to Supreme Commander of all Allied powers in Europe. In 1945, when it was time for the Axis powers to surrender, it was General Grunther who handed the terms of the surrender to the commander of all Axis forces. General Grunther was awarded many high military honors for his expert planning and actions during World War II. Among these many awards and decorations that General Grunther received were 3 Distinguished Service Medals, a Bronze Star Medal, and a Legion of Merit Medal. Following the conclusion of World War II, the Allied forces authorized the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, better known as NATO. General Dwight D. Eisenhower was selected as Supreme Commander of the Military Division of NATO, and without hesitation, he chose General Grunther as his Chief of Staff. In 1952, General Eisenhower retired from military service in order to run for presidency, and in 1953, he personally appointed General Grunther as his successor to serve as Supreme Commander of Military Operations of NATO. It was then that the 53-year-old General Grunther was promoted to the rank of 4-star general, making him the youngest 4-star general in the Army. Even throughout all of his success, General Grunther never forgot the place that instilled in him his love for learning, the military, and his country, St. Thomas Academy.
Friday, October 1st, 1954, the Aquin reported the arrival on campus of General Alfred M. Grunther, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe. General Grunther, a 1916 graduate of St. Thomas Academy, was met at Wool Chamberlain Airport by the Very Reverend Vincent Flynn, president of the college and a classmate of Grunther's. During World War II, his work in planning the Normandy invasion, the North African campaign, and the Italian invasion earned him the reputation for handling the toughest assignments. General Mark Clark described him as the best damn soldier in the Army. Dwight Eisenhower called him my right arm. The NATO commander was greeted at St. Thomas by an honor guard of Academy cadets lining the sidewalks from Summit Avenue to the administration building. At a press conference in room 111 of what is now Aquinas Hall, the general answered questions about the success of the European Defense Council. That afternoon, at a ceremony on O'Shaughnessy Field, President Flynn conferred a Doctor of Laws degree on General Grunther. The general later reviewed the College Air ROTC and the cadets of the Academy. And by the time the general's entourage left down Summit Avenue, he left behind an impression still recalled today.
In 1956, General Grunther retired from the Army after nearly 40 years of service. He graced the cover of a 1956 Time magazine issue, honoring General Grunther for his service to the country. But General Grunther's career was far from over. When word got out that General Grunther was retiring from the Army, numerous private companies gave him very lucrative offers to work for them. He turned all of them down, instead choosing to become the president of the American Red Cross in 1957. During the next 7 years and 3 months, General Grunther wrote 30,000 letters, traveled more than 700,000 miles, and made 801 speeches, spreading the mission of the American Red Cross throughout the world. General Grunther resigned from his presidency of the American Red Cross in 1964, planning to retire. But this would not be the case. Both public and private sectors pleaded with General Grunther for his services. Over the next 15 years, he served repeatedly on government boards and commissions, embracing defense and foreign affairs, many public and private organizations, and on the board of directors of several major American companies. More than 20 nations, including the Soviet Union during the Cold War, decorated General Grunther in recognition of his humanitarian work in war and in peace. General Grunther has been granted honorary degrees by nearly 40 American colleges and universities and given awards and citations by a large number of other organizations. General Grunther died in Washington, D.C. on May 30th, 1983, and is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. While he may be gone, the legacy that General Grunther left on our school, our nation, and our world will never be forgotten. At this time, I would ask that General Votel and Admiral Crowley please join us again on stage for the presentation of the Fleming Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage General Grunther's grandchildren, Paul Grunther and Lucy Grunther, and accepting the 2019 Fleming Medal on General Grunther's behalf, Major Alex Grunther, United States Air Force, and the great-grandson of General Alfred M. Grunther.
Wow. Thank you so much, Cadet Young. That was an awesome bio and research you did on my great-grandfather. I'm Alex Grunther. I'm one of General Grunther's, I guess, great-grandkids. I was born just 2 months prior to his passing, so unfortunately I didn't get to really meet him, and I can't really share any stories about him. But my aunt and uncle are up here, and after I give a quick little thank you speech, they'll hopefully share some stories about him. But believe it or not, the first time I learned about him was in high school. I was taking a junior ROTC class, and one of the instructors brought out this history book and said, "Hey, is this general related to you?" And I was like, "I don't know, let me go home." So fast forward 15 years, I'm active duty Air Force, and I was selected for an assignment at NATO headquarters in Belgium. And I had the opportunity to meet with one of the NATO historians there and just learn how important my great-grandfather was in shaping the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, as we heard earlier. And I mean, some of the, the liberation of Europe. So it's pretty amazing to have that lineage and to hear even more about it this morning, facts that I didn't even know. And I also got to drive down the Eza Street in Belgium on the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe installation called the Rue Grunther. So if you ever go there, take a drive. I guess since it's Veterans Day, and with what's going on, is regardless of what you kind of see in the news today, is the Europeans don't forget what the American veterans gave, back in World War II and earlier. While living in Belgium, I had the opportunity to visit several of our American military cemeteries there in Belgium on Memorial Day. And what really astonished me was that each one, the grade school students there, the Belgians, learned our American national anthem and sang it in appreciation for what Americans before us gave during World War II. So it was pretty neat. And with the alumni from St. Thomas, a lot also played into that, so thank you. While General Grunther may not have been dive bombing enemy ships like Captain Fleming, we are here today because of he was an American hero in another way that selflessly served our nation, and his legacy continues today. On behalf of General Grunther and the family, We are very proud of what Alfred Grunther achieved, and we thank you for honoring his memory today. Lastly, I'd like to thank every man and woman who has served our nation. Thank you for everything you've given.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this very warm welcome, and I think I forgot my notes. Oh, yeah. Sorry, what a great start. So, I must also say that somehow last night, between last night and today, I lost on my computer my prepared speech, so we're going to see how this goes. Anyway, I would like to say thank you so much to St. Thomas Academy and everybody here for the warm welcome our family has received, the friendly faces, the wonderful voices of the choir, and to Colonel Hetherington for bringing us all together and working with us over these last few months. So my name is Lucy Maria Grunther. I'm the granddaughter, one of the granddaughters of General Grunther. The world knew my grandfather, as Jordan said, with all his accomplishments in the public eye. His grandchildren knew him as Papa Al. He was a devout Roman Catholic who was married to my grandmother, Mama Grace, for more than 50 years. He, as Jordan said, he left public service because he wanted to spend more time with his family. He was a principled man, and an example of this is in his bridge tournamenting. He was called upon to conduct the tournament in New York City. And the major donor and chairman, Mr. Goldman, had asked him, because people had been straggling in and being late, he said, please enforce military discipline to make sure that we're all on time. And I know you understand that. So it just so happened that everybody else was there, but Mr. Goldman and his partner were late. So my grandfather, Alfred Grunther, said, okay, we'll give them 1 minute to appear. 60 seconds later, they still weren't there. So he disqualified them and brought in the alternates. Now remember, Mr. Goldman was the major donor of this and the organizer. So eventually, Mr. Goldman was very angry. Eventually, they became on good terms again. So that was a happy story. So even with all this stuff that my grandfather did, he had a very demanding job and demanding schedules. He stayed fit by swimming almost every day. He also, with his many speeches that he gave, he had a large collection of books that contained humorous quips and anecdotes. And some of those books we still have. But he also, on 3x5 cards, would have these and carry them around with him. Here's one that's handwritten in his fountain pen that he also wrote his many letters with. And so he wanted to interject them in his speeches to make people at ease and just provide a little bit of humor. And he also had some that had inspirations on them. And one of his jokes that my cousin Joni mentioned yesterday that he would say, one of his quips was, I don't like my cooking either, but I don't complain about it. And as far as complaining or cooking, my grandfather didn't know how to cook. He, after my grandmother passed away, my grandfather had to be taught how to boil water. That's kind of hard to believe, but he just never had to do it himself. So he eventually learned how to make himself simple meals and was able to, do that. And as all of us were, at one time, we were all teenagers, and some of us still are. So my great-grandfather, Christian, Grunther would write letters to Alfred while he was in school here at St. Thomas Academy. And there are some letters over there that you can see that his father had typed. And in them, there are things like all parents do, support, advice, asking, what's with this, using the word ain't, don't use contractions. And in turn, my grandfather wrote the same kind of letters to his sons, and their sons, my uncle and my dad, wrote the same kind of letters to their kids, and I understand at least one of my brothers wrote the same kind of letters to his kids. So I guess as a parent thing, we probably have all experienced that. And I'm sure right now my dad would be writing me a letter saying, why didn't you back up that and print the speech? So also my grandfather had a prodigious memory, as Jordan had mentioned. And he remembered people's names and made a point to be quite personal. And he also had the personal touch with his many, many, many handwritten letters that he wrote. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of his Grunthergrams. They were short, to the point messages that could either be a request or a thank you. And it was always handwritten, very personal. And if I remember, I was trying to find one, but if I remember, it was a caricature of him kind of on the run, and I don't know if anybody else saw those, but I wanted to bring one, but I couldn't find one. So in closing, I would like to read one of the inspirational things from this card that was my grandfather's. He wrote on this side, and he evidently had typed on this side. Carl Schurz, an immigrant who came to this country in 1848 after the failure of the European revolutions, said, "Ideals are like stars. You will not succeed in touching them with your hands. But like the seafaring man on the desert of waters, you choose them as your guides, and following them, you will reach your destiny." Thank you.
I'm Paul Grunther. General Alfred M. Grunther was my grandfather on my father's side. As you've heard, we called him Papa Al. I lived close to Papa Al and Mama Grace, who is my grandmother, who's been mentioned, during my formative years. It was about between the ages of 10 and 14, so not far off from where a lot of you gentlemen are in the audience. Through his example, he taught me respect for people, self-discipline, personal presence, and a sense of humor. It seemed like every Sunday after Catholic Mass, Mom and Dad would drag us, all 6 of us kids, right, Joan? From Arlington, Virginia, to see Mama Grace and Papa Al, and they lived in a high-rise apartment in Washington, D.C. So, of course, as kids, we would get into the elevator and we'd fight for who could push the button on the elevator. Then when we'd get to their apartment, there was a long hallway there, and we would run down the hallway to push the doorbell to get in. So the door would open and we'd storm in. Well, Papa Al always greeted this thundering horde, of course, with a firm handshake, and he always had a warm eye contact that you got from this man. Then he would proceed to address everybody as Henry, and then he would tell us that we had just missed Mama Grace's swan dive off the balcony into the pool 14 floors below. Ha ha. Following that, we'd have a staff briefing about our school life. You know, some things never change. He would ask us leading questions about our school and activities that he claimed that he'd heard on the nightly news. I guess we bought into that for the first few years, right? But he'd always congratulate us on our accomplishments and then reward us again with a firm handshake. So at one point, he created a speech contest that engaged all of us as grandchildren. And the speech started, "Once upon a time, there was a young lass from Natchez whose clothes were always in patches." So we all practiced and performed the speech in front of the adults. The winner was selected and rewarded with $10 and, of course, a firm handshake, but I can't remember who actually won the speech contest. In my eyes, Papa Al was a kind man, and he, as Lucy Maria says, he always remembered people's names. He was very polite to the people in his apartment complex, always greeted the doorman and the people at the desk, and he always knew things about their lives and asked them. A very personable guy, very much in touch with people. I feel very blessed to have shared my life with Papa Al early in life. He was a proud warrior, a great statesman, and a dogmatic teacher. His life provides all of us with an excellent example that goes well beyond his historical accomplishments. If we learn from him his respect for others, his dedication to the human race, and his drive for self-improvement, we will all be better people and the world will be a better place. Thank you.
Just a few closing remarks and thank yous before we conclude. Cadets, please remain seated as our guests depart. Formation will be held here in the gym. For our guests, there is a private reception immediately following, located directly upstairs in the band room. You can access the band room by the stairs or elevator, which are both located directly outside the gym doors as you exit. I would encourage everybody that as you leave, please check the displays we have for both General Grunther and Major General Ryan, located on the tables and easels to your left, my right. Many of the artifacts for General Grunther have been generously donated by the Grunther family, and these include one-of-a-kind busts of both General Grunther and his good friend, General Eisenhower, and an original painting of General Grunther, which served as the cover of Time magazine in 1956. On behalf of the entire St. Thomas Academy community, I would like to thank General and Mrs. Votel for attending our ceremony today. Thank you, sir, for your very kind and inspirational words on this special Veterans Day celebration. We are honored and grateful to have you here to help us honor all veterans and to pay tribute to two fellow general officers who, like you, sir, made tremendous contributions to the defense and security of our nation. We thank you both, General and Mrs. Votel, for your many years of devoted service and leadership to the Army and to our country. Thank you to the Benfers for your very meaningful dedication of sand from Omaha Beach. Your dedication is a timely and fitting tribute to the leadership and service of Generals Grunther and Ryan, and to the many courageous St. Thomas Academy military graduates who crossed that very beach during the Normandy invasion 75 years ago. To the Grunther family, thank you all for making this special trip honoring General Grunther, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and a great-great-grandfather, friend, role model, general officer, leader, St. Thomas Military Academy graduate, and a man of truly exemplary character. Thank you for your generous donations of such precious memories, artifacts, and tributes to the outstanding leadership demonstrated by your beloved Papa Al. You can rest assured that those memories will be displayed and cared for here at the Academy for all to enjoy in a way that would make the General proud. Your presence here today means more to us than words can express. The leadership legacy of General Grunther will live on at St. Thomas Academy. Again, we cannot thank you enough for being here today on this very special Veterans Day. To the staff and cadets who helped make this ceremony what it is today, we thank you for all your hard work. The list of names is too long to mention. We are short on time, but you all know who you are. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please travel safe and stay warm. Thank you, and go Cadets.